Well, let's move on to a question that I have about 4 or 5 cards on, and that deals with Insure Tennessee. And we know, at least from the things we read in the paper and hear on television, that issue is dead this session, that it is not going to come up. But I'd like to see a show of hands. Only one committee voted on Insure Tennessee. Two committees, thank you, Senator, voted on Insure Tennessee last session. In its form last session, how many of you supported Insure Tennessee? And how many of you opposed it? Okay, Senator Briggs, you helped carry that legislation, so let's start with you and tell us the status of Insure Tennessee, if you think it could come up this session, and what the future may hold for that issue, and then we'll go to an opponent.
I don't know if it'll come up this session or not, but I think pretty much the consensus is that even if it does come up, it's not going to go any further than it went last year. There's several reasons. We have a presidential election coming up. We don't know whether a year from now we're going to have a Democratic or Republican president. Some of the Republican candidates have already pledged to look at the possibility of having block grants, which I think would be much more palatable to the legislature, even in its present form. It's also an election year where all the people in the state House of Representatives are up for election, half the senators are up for election, and generally, in historic terms, we don't take up highly controversial issues during election years like this. So I think that probably what the strategy will be for those of us that are for Insure Tennessee is just to keep the thought alive, carrying on into 2017. And if we really remember what this is all about, it's trying to bring health care to those that don't have health care. And if we have another program by a different name, it may be, if we have, particularly at the national level, we have a Republican president, it may be called something different, it may be financed in a different way. But I think we have to keep, for those of us who advocate for people who don't have insurance, we need to keep our eye on the target, and that's getting health care and insurance for the people that don't have it.
Representative Smith, I think you raised your hand on the opposite side.
No, I did not.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who would?
Yeah.
Okay, Senator.
The bill had mentioned, I lived through TennCare. I was the only person in the Senate that voted no on allowing Governor McWhorter through legislation to go ahead and negotiate a waiver with the Clinton administration. And it turned out that we had very little control over that program. And what you'd like to see as a member of the Finance Committee, or actually any of the legislators, you like to see predictability and the ability in tough times to dial back programs. This year, I think over the last 5 years, we've averaged putting in approximately $166 million into the TennCare program. And that's been driven mainly by enrollment issues, and probably number 2 are some of the very expensive drug treatments that have come out. But we have little control over that population. Were Congress to change the Affordable Care Act and make it more like a block grant to the states, where we could provide insurance to individuals, and that way control the amount, the deductibles and premiums and things like that, I think it'd be a far better program. At Congress, when they passed the Affordable Care Act, unfortunately gave supplements to individuals above 100% of the poverty level. And I think in Tennessee it's somewhere around $11,700 a month, and it goes up to around $47,000. I said a month, a year, $47,000 a year, and $11,700 a year. But they provided no benefits for the individuals below the 100%, and that was a real fallacy in it. They had a provision that if the states did not cover those people under their existing Medicaid programs, then the federal government could remove Medicaid funding from the states, the entire Medicaid funding. And the courts, I think very rightly, ruled that that type of heavy-handedness in dealing with the states was unconstitutional. And that's what left the gap. And in Tennessee, we'll probably this year, I think we'll put at least 166 million, if not more, into the program. And when you're looking at an overcollection from the previous year of $350 million, that's pretty close to half the amount. We still have other things that we have made commitments to fund, such as the BEP. We'd like to give employees at least a cost of living raise. We have some of the other big items, the higher education. To the extent we don't fund higher education, people pay more in tuition. So in all, we've probably got, if you just look at inflationary factors in the state government, it's probably in the range of 400 to 450 million. And the big chunk of that is going to TennCare, which we have difficulty in controlling.
We're going to leave that issue. Yes, ma'am. Could you tell us who you represent, just so the lawmakers know?
I represent the 300,000 people that still don't have insurance, and some are so ill that they're going to die in the next year. I don't know about the accuracy of all your figures, Mr. McNally, because I also volunteer to enroll people in the Affordable Care Act. And Joe Armstrong made the most important point when he said that this state would receive $1.5 billion, which should erase any of these figures that you're coming up with about how much Tennessee has to contribute to TennCare or Medicaid.
So do you have a question for the senator?
The question is really for Dr. Briggs.
Okay.
Has any study been done to show how many people are so ill that will die in the next year? I know one person who already has died because she was refused admission to a hospital because she had no Medicaid and no insurance. Did we have any numbers on that?
You know, we don't have numbers on that, but if that was done, that needs to be reported because that's illegal. A hospital, we have EMTALA laws, and the EMTALA laws say that anyone that shows up to an emergency room has to be admitted. Also, if we get telephone calls from Kentucky or Western North Carolina or anywhere from an emergency room, and they say we have someone who has an illness that we can't take care of in our small emergency room, we want to send it to Knoxville. By law, we are required to take those, or the hospital can lose all of their federal funding through Medicare and Medicaid. So, but let me just answer you. The answer is we don't have reliable numbers because people cannot be turned away. Now there are. I think another better question is how sick would they have been that sick if they could have received care all along? But I don't have any numbers on that.
Well, the person I referred to was admitted to a hospital and sent home with hospice because she had no way to pay for life-saving surgery.